Hello, members of Mormon Women for Ethical Government, for our weekly Grow. We are excited my name's Emily, and I am the co-lead for the Utah chapter of MWEG. And today we have a really fun guest. I'm excited to welcome Mary Margaret Pingree, who is the Executive Director of the Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission. Also known, their acronym is JPEC. So same like MWEG.
Yes.
And so I am going to go ahead and just turn the time over to Mary Margaret. She has some great information for us in Utah specifically on how we do judge retention, and which we have on our ballot this year. We all can vote yes or no to retain a handful of judges wherever we are in the state. And she'll kind of talk about the similarities and differences that Utah has in how they get their judges and retain them. So I will just go ahead and turn the time over to her, and she's going to share her screen and share some great information. And we will, I'm just going to kind of watch the chat if you have questions, and then at the end, we'll be able to ask Mary Margaret some questions. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see it? Does it look good, Emily?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I am so excited to have the opportunity to talk to you today because Utah has a really unique way of dealing with voters or dealing with judges on the ballot, and it's confusing to a lot of voters. And I hope to be able to answer any questions that you have and let you know where you can turn for information as you're trying to make a decision about which judges to vote yes or no on. And the bottom line is that you, as a voter, have a lot of power in Utah when it comes to judges. You shape Utah's justice system. You decide which judges remain on the bench and continue to serve and which judges don't. And so it's really, really important that you know about your judges. I know that's a tricky thing, but I'm going to help you understand how you can find out more about judges on the ballot in Utah. So I am not able to move my screen, my slides. Why? There we go. Utah has a really unique system for how we retain judges, and each state is different. Some states elect judges, some states appoint judges, and even with those who maybe appoint judges, they all do it a little bit differently. Utah's model is based on merit, and which means that from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, the focus is on a person's qualifications for office more than anything else. And so it's not focused on their political affiliation. In fact, there can't be, I'll show you a part of the Utah Constitution that says that it can't be based on political affiliation. It's not based on their connections that they have or their views on any particular issue. It's based on their qualifications for office. Once a judge is appointed, then those judges are held accountable to the public, and they're on the ballot at the end of their term, and voters decide whether they keep their job or not. But the challenge that we have with this system is keeping voters informed. It's really hard for voters to know much information about a judge if they don't spend time in court, which is most people. And, you know, sometimes you're in court for a traffic ticket here and there, but for the most part, you're not in these judges' courtrooms and you don't have any firsthand information. So voters kind of feel like they're, floating around without an anchor. And so JPEC is an organization that gathers information on Utah's judges and shares it with the public so that you can have that information. This just gives you a little bit of an overview of how the process works. So it starts with a nominating commission. When a position opens up, either because a judge retires or the legislature creates a new judge position, a nominating commission takes applications. And from the very beginning, they are looking for the qualification, or they take applications. They're looking for qualifications. Is this person qualified to be a judge? Do they have the right temperament? Do they have the right experience to be a judge? They pick the 5 most qualified candidates and they send those names to the governor. The public has a chance to weigh in once they send those names. Those names are publicly posted and the public can share whether they have any issues with those people. The governor interviews those people and then selects one. And that one is then submitted to the Senate. And the Senate asks for public input again, and then either confirms or doesn't confirm that appointment. For the most part, they confirm the appointment. And then the final step is the one that's important for you, and that's that voters retain. The judges take the bench, they start serving, and the voters haven't really weighed in. But at the end of their term, that's when voters get to weigh in on a judge and whether that judge should be retained. This is a little quote that I pulled out from the Utah Constitution, that selection of judges shall be based solely upon consideration of fitness for office without regard to any partisan political consideration, which I think is really important. And none of the work that JPEC does addresses any partisanship. We stay completely nonpartisan. So how can you make an educated decision about judges on your ballot? The Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission, who we are, is an independent government commission that's responsible for evaluating all of our judges and then sharing that information with the public so that you can all be informed when you vote. And it's part of our mission. It's the first part of our mission, that we collect valid information to share with voters. We also promote, by doing that, public accountability of the judiciary. And the third thing that we do is we share these evaluations with judges. And so we provide feedback to judges so that they can get better. Judges don't receive a lot of feedback. Once you become a judge, people stop giving you input. And so we also don't want any judge, when they come up for retention, to be surprised. And so we give them an evaluation so that they can know what they need to work on. We're one of only 6 states that provides this information to voters. So we try to be as transparent as we can. We think it's important that the public have all of this information. We share as much information as we can with you so that you have it when you vote. Here's what our commission looks like. There are 13 commissioners on the Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission, and they are appointed by the different branches of government. So 4 by the legislature, 4 by the Supreme Court, 4 by the governor, and then a 13th member is the director of the division, or the Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice, also a mouthful. Just, we love our acronyms in state government. You can see pictures of these commissioners. These are our existing commissioners right now. You may recognize some of their names. Christine Durham is the one that most people recognize. She's the retired Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court. So we do have retired judges on the commission. They give us feedback on what it's like to be a judge as we go through these evaluations. We have 2 retired judges. We have some attorneys. We have some non-attorneys. Some other rules that we have to follow in our commission is that no more than half of the members can be attorneys. It was set up that regular citizens also participate in this process and have a lot of input. And then no more than half of the members of the commission can be from the same political party. So that's another check that goes into the commission. Here's how we gather information about judges. So we send surveys to people who spend time in court. So it might not be you as a voter, but attorneys spend time in court. Court staff are in court every day, all day. Allied professionals, those are people like social workers in a juvenile court or an interpreter that comes to court. And then also jurors receive surveys. We also have a courtroom observation program where we train regular citizens to go into a judge's courtroom and observe a judge And in fact, if any of you are interested in being a courtroom observer, we're always looking for really great people who are interested in, gathering information about judges and sharing it with the public. It's a really important public service. And so please contact me if you're interested. We're always looking for new courtroom observers. Courtroom observers will go in and watch a judge for a minimum of 2 hours. And what they do is look for, they're evaluating a judge's fairness and respect. So they will decide at the end of the day whether they feel like that judge promotes fairness. And there are usually 4 courtroom observers that go in at different times for each judge. And you'll see that when you look at the evaluation data that I'll show you in a minute. You can see how each observer rates each judge. We also take public comment. So if someone has been in court and they do have an experience with a judge, we encourage you to share that through our public comment portal, and we include that in a judge's evaluation. You'll see also that there's interviews. Sometimes there are judges that serve in smaller courts. So justice court judge in a small city in Utah would not have enough attorneys in their courtroom for us to do a survey and have it be a valid survey. And so what we'll do is send a staff member down to their courtroom. They'll stand outside the courtroom and they'll interview people who have been in the judge's courtroom and ask them some of the same questions that are on the survey. And then we'll include that in that judge's evaluation instead of giving them a survey. So it's different depending on the type of judge that it is. There are judges that are on the bench 1 day a month, and then there are full-time judges. It's a wide range because Utah has different types of cities, counties, and so different types of judges. These are the things that we evaluate a judge on. There are 4 different categories. The first is legal ability. So only attorneys can rate a judge on legal ability. And they're asked questions like, does the judge follow legal precedent? And do they make appropriate findings of fact and apply the law to the facts? We also evaluate integrity and judicial temperament. Those would be things like, does the judge show respect to all court participants? And are they able to separate their personal beliefs from their rulings? Very important one. We evaluate their administrative skill. So are they prepared? Do they manage the courtroom well? And then their procedural fairness. Does the judge provide all parties the opportunity to speak and be heard? Are they fair and impartial? And then you'll see over here in this little, I don't know what shape that is, hexagon, that there's a minimum performance standard that is set in Utah code. And when someone receives a survey and they rate a judge, they rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. And a judge has to receive a 3.6 in order to meet the minimum performance standard in each of these areas. We do a couple of different types of evaluations, and all judges receive both. They receive a midterm evaluation. I talked about one of JPEC's mission is to help judges improve. This midterm evaluation is focused on that. The public doesn't see it. It's halfway through their term instead of at the end of their term. We ask the same questions on the surveys. We gather the same data, but it's confidential. We give it to the judge, and the idea is that they can see maybe where their problem areas are, where their strengths, where their weaknesses are, and they have a couple of years to work on those before they come up on the ballot and all the information in their evaluation is public. The retention evaluation is the one that you see, and it's the one commissioners use to make their determination as to whether the judge meets minimum performance standards. We do give that evaluation to the judge before you see it. And the reason for that is that judges, and especially judges that don't perform well, maybe poor performing judges, will often look at their evaluation and they'll decide, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go on the ballot this time. I think I'm done. And they step down. And it gives them the opportunity to do that in a less public forum. So any judge that does decide to run for retention, you will see their data and all of their information on our website. So how do you find this information? Where is it? What should you look for? Our website is judges.utah.gov. And when you go to our website, this is the landing page. The first thing that you do is select your county. So I'm going to put in Salt Lake County because right now I'm sitting in Salt Lake County. If I do that, this is the top of the list of judges that I'm going to see. There are 15 judges on the ballot in Salt Lake County. You'll notice the top one is a justice court judge, which means it's one of the smaller courts, smaller geographic areas for Taylorsville. I don't live in Taylorsville, so I'm not going to see this judge on my ballot, but I'm going to see all of the rest of them. There, you'll see the fourth one down is the Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court, Justice Durant. Everybody in the state of Utah will see this judge on their ballot. And then depending on where you live, you will see different judges. If the judge is over an area where you live, you will see that judge on your ballot. So a few interesting things about this page. If you look at Judge Bound, the top one, you will see what kind of a judge they are, where they serve, and then you'll see a green button that says whether they meet or exceed minimum performance standards. It would be yellow if they did not meet minimum performance standards. This green button does not mean we're telling you, oh, you should vote for this judge. What this green button means is that judge received the scores of 3.6 or above in all of their categories, and we want you to know that. And the commission voted on that and said, yes, this judge meets minimum performance standards. Your standard might be completely different. You may want to look at something else when it comes to a judge. It's up to you how you vote on that judge. But sometimes people get confused with this button and they think we're telling them that they should vote yes on the judge, and that's not what's happening here. It just means we want you to know this judge met the minimum performance standards. The last column shows you an interesting percentage. So when we send surveys out, we ask people who complete the survey to tell us whether they would retain the judge. And this is the percentage of people who say, yes, I would retain the judge. So you can see that there are different percentages. The screenshot that I pulled up has really high percentages, but it will vary. And you can look at that and say, this is an interesting percentage. I want to investigate that a little bit more. If you want to know more about a judge, which I would encourage you to do, you click on the View More blue button at the bottom, and I'm going to do that for Judge Hogan, who's the last one on this list. And this is what you'll see. You'll see a paragraph that comes up that summarizes all of the data that we collect for this particular judge. So this paragraph is very formulaic, the way that we put it together. And I want to show you the different parts of this paragraph so that you can then apply that to the judges that are on your ballot. The first sentence will show you how the judge compares to other judges in their court. So this judge's scores are statistically above the average of his district court peers. So, and you can see that in the chart below. You can see the different categories, and you can see that the judge's score is the top bar, the navy blue one, and the average score of that judge's peers is the gold bar, and the minimum standard is the green bar. So you can see that this judge scores statistically higher than the rest of his peers in all of the categories. You can also then see his percentage recommending retention, 99%, which was on the previous page. We repeat it here. Then this middle part is really interesting. We get a lot of comments when we get surveys back, and we process all of those comments and we look for themes. So if someone says something like, oh, this judge drives me crazy, and they're the only one that says it, it's not going to show up in this paragraph. But if 10 people say it, then we're going to share it with you, the voters. So for this particular judge, a lot of people describe the judge as kind, caring, and relatable. And then we found a quote that we thought summed up what a lot of people were saying, that this judge has the rare ability to meet defendants where they are and speak to them on a level that they will understand. So you can kind of get a sense of what this judge's strengths are. The next sentence tells you a little bit about judicial attributes. One of the things that we ask people to rate a judge on is a list of adjectives. And I'm going to go here. This is the list of adjectives that we ask people to rank a judge on. And there are 10 of them. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative. If the judge does particularly well or particularly poorly on those adjectives, rating those adjectives, we will put that in the narrative. So this judge did particularly well in capable, ethical, impartial, knowledgeable, open-minded, respectful, decisive, patient, and prepared. That's a lot. Most judges don't have that many adjectives. Some judges have no adjectives because they didn't score differently than their peers on the adjectives, and some have negative adjectives. So that's something to look for too. Then there's a sentence about observers and whether observers feel confident that the judge will treat them fairly. For this particular judge, all of the observers reported confidence. And then this judge, the next sentence is unusual. We received a lot of public comments for this judge, but by statute, we're only evaluate a judge in the 4 categories that I mentioned. And a lot of these comments were about specific decisions. So this judge had a controversial case or two, and people were frustrated. And we got a lot of public comments about it. So this sentence, the commission received multiple public comments for this judge regarding specific court decisions, but according to statute, we don't review court rulings. That's the role of the appellate courts. We put that in because we wanted the public to know, we got your comments, we read them, we saw them. We can't use them because we can only evaluate a judge in these 4 areas. And the comments that came through were about whether the ruling was correct or not. And that's not something that JPEC does. So you won't see that very often, but that's kind of an interesting one for this particular judge. That gives you a sense of this paragraph and what the information you can find in it. If you go a little bit deeper, you can find the answers to every question that we ask on the survey. And you can compare the scores of this judge. You can see L. Douglas Hogan compared to district court is the average of all district court judges. So you can see how people rated the judge and how people rated everyone else. Then again, this is the ratings that he received on the adjectives. The top white section is the positive adjectives. So the higher the score, the better. The bottom, the tan, is negative adjectives. And so the lower the score, the better. Then the last thing that I'll point out to you is courtroom observations. This is a summary of the 4 observers that went into this judge's court, and you can read what they said. We look for themes here too. We try to tell you observations that they made, whether they were strongly positive towards the judge, whether they were negative towards the judge. And so you can see that all observers were positive for this particular judge. It's not always true. And so I'd encourage you to go look at the observations. Again, this is a regular citizen's perspective of a judge. So I guess the most important thing that I would like to share with you is how important your vote and your voice is. You decide whether judges stay in office, and judges have to receive over 50% of the vote to stay in office, and they're only on the ballot every 6 years for most judges, 10 years for Supreme Court justices. If you are informed and you learn about your judges, you are holding those judges accountable for their performance, and that's important. There are a lot of new judges on the ballot this year, and it's the first time that you have the opportunity to weigh in on their performance. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to share this resource with your friends and your family. It's very simple. You just go to judges.utah.gov, you enter your county, and then you review all the data that's there. So Emily, should I see if people have questions? But you're muted.
Thank you so much, Mary Margaret, for that wonderful overview and the work that you do at JPEC. Yes, if anybody has a question, you're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask it or put it in the chat. But we'll just take a few minutes if anybody has additional thoughts or questions. Yeah, one thing that stood out to me this time, because I've heard from you before about this, but I learned something new every time. And knowing that 45% of the judges are new, and this is our first time giving them an evaluation is huge. Like that is a big deal. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I'm not seeing any in the chat, but if anyone wants to unmute themselves, ask a question.
I love questions. This process is not the simplest for voters to understand always. So if anything's confusing, I'm happy to address it.
So is it kind of like a matching game looking, because I'm looking at my ballot
Oh,
and like they're not in alphabetical order, it looks like. So you
the
have to kind of,
judges.
yeah.
Well, so yeah, you narrow it down by your county, and then it should be a subset of those. It should be pretty easy to see once you narrow it down to your county. But
Okay.
you might have to match a little bit.
Okay. And so it looks like you can search by their last name if you
You
can.
also, yes, you also can search by their name. If that's a little bit easier, if the match, it doesn't work quite as well.
I don't know why, but is it new? Because I've never seen it like this.
On the ballot,
Yeah, yeah. Like
no,
every 4 years.
it's every election, there are different judges. It's just when
Okay.
they cycle through. So the judges that you're seeing now are at the end of their term. And like the Chief Justice, for example, it's the end of his 10-year term. And so you won't see him again on the ballot for another 10 years.
Yeah, that's probably where I'm getting that, where I'm like, these names don't look familiar.
Right, because they just don't come up that often. Right.
Shelly in the comments said, thanks for the resource. Looks like Colorado has one too. Now I know to find and explore.
Yes.
So yeah,
Colorado does.
Okay.
Colorado's system is quite similar to Utah's. It's probably the most similar. Colorado and Alaska have the most similar systems to Utah.
Wonderful. That's great news. I'm glad that it's helpful for people even outside of Utah.
Yeah.
Or just knowing. Yeah.
Sorry, I came to this conversation late, so I apologize if you already answered this. But I was wondering, you say that just regular citizens go and evaluate these judges at their job. And I wondered, do the judges know when someone is coming to evaluate them? Are they given warning? How does that work?
We do not give them warning. We try to be anonymous. Sometimes they know we're there. Because, like, for example, in a juvenile court, which is a really protected court, sometimes they will ask the observer to introduce themselves, and we tell the observer to just tell the judge who they are, if that's the case. Because the judge is trying to protect the juvenile's information. But sometimes they don't know we're there. We just have people kind of slip in on the bench. And if you've been to court before, it's open to the public and anybody can go. And so sometimes you can just be a fly on the wall if you're an observer, but sometimes they do know.
All right, great, great. This absolutely wonderful information. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for coming.
That was the other piece. I'm like, should I go be an observer?
You should. You absolutely should. The thing about being an observer, I will tell everybody, is it's super flexible. You can do it like once a quarter, once every 6 months. It's totally up to you how often you do it. So it's not one of those volunteer experiences where you have to say, okay, I'm available on the first Tuesday of every month. You can be available when you're available.
That's very good to know. Are you just, I'm assuming they give you kind of a timeline of, or what judges you're observing and what their schedule's like? Or
we will assign you to a judge. We'll train you on what to look for and what report you know, your reporting information you need to have, and then we'll talk to you a little bit about bias. And then we will assign you to, you'll watch court with one of our staff first and talk about it and talk about what you maybe noticed or didn't notice and what kinds of things should go on a report. And then you'll be assigned to a particular judge, and we'll give you either links to that judge's calendar or tell you when the judge is convening, and you can kind of pick from those lists which is the most convenient for you.
Very neat.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mary Margaret, for doing this. This was part of our Hope Votes series. And I did introduce GROW at the beginning, that we gather, recharge, organize, and work is what GROW stands for. So thank you to those who joined us live. And oh, we have one more. Let's see. They want to share the last slide. Oh,
Okay.
I took a screenshot of that. So that's a great, yeah, we can share that somewhere.
The
Perfect.
last slide, like, okay, you're taking care of it.
Yeah, the three
Okay.
things. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
So perfect. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and we hope I think everyone found this very helpful and useful, and more people will have access to this, to the recording. So thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Perfect. Bye-bye.